a need that we discuss. There is a need that we discuss the computer crimes and cyberspace laws that are in recent years being promulgated by our governments in our respective countries in the Southern Africa region, Lesotho included. So this platform here today, this meeting, is basically about the discussions around those pieces of legislation. So just to go through the objectives of our discussions today, we are here, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, presenters, and speakers, to forge a collaborative effort towards raising alarm on the implications of the cybersecurity and computer crimes laws on the citizens and the media's right to freedom of expression, of opinion. This platform needs to share insights on the contradictions of the digital technologies, which on one hand expand the citizens' freedom of expression and enable the media to access information, while at the same time catalyze digital surveillance by states on the media and the citizens. This platform also allows us to confer on the regional and national laws seeking to protect citizens against computer and cyber crimes, but at the same time allowing discussion on the implications of the same laws in throttling freedom of expression and media freedom, particularly freedom to investigate malfeasance in the public office. We are also on this platform to draw lessons, most importantly, from other countries that have promulgated the computer crimes and cybersecurity laws, and the expressed fears are not experienced. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are on this platform here today, organized by MISA Lesotho, to achieve the objectives that I've just outlined. And Adem Zinkulu, thank you very much, Nate. That was all.
Thanks very much, Nate Ntsukunya. That is the National Director for MISA Lesotho, Mr. Lekgetho Ntsukunyane. Let me now hasten to invite the chairperson of MISA Lesotho, that is Mr. Bolwetse, if he's around. Ndate Kanane, are you around to do the welcome remarks? Yes, Ndate, continue.
I'm around and thank you very much for the platform. I would like to welcome the MISA Regional Director, who is part of the meeting, and welcome all the participants to this important discussion. Like Ndate Ntsukunyane has already mentioned, we are gathered digitally today to discuss cyber security and computer crimes laws. looking at what's currently happening on the digital space, I think we can all agree that there is a need to have laws that will govern and regulate such spaces, because they are not just a threat to the media, but they are a threat to the population at large. However, as governments, especially in the Southern African region, embark on a journey to make laws that will govern these spaces, it's important that as watchdogs ensure that such laws, as necessary as they are, but should not restrict our fundamental human rights, the freedom of expression, as mentioned by the National Director. I'm sure we are all aware, those who are living in Lesotho, of course, that the government is in the process of making such laws. It's a process that started a very long time ago, probably 2 years back. But it is yet to be completed because there are concerns, legitimate concerns for that matter, that the law which the government plans to promulgate has the potential, or some of its sections have the potential to restrict fundamental human rights, and also have the potential to restrict the freedom of the press. So as that is the case, then we can all agree, minds together, instead of just criticizing, we have to come up with what we could say would be better solutions to what seems to be a problem. And I think this platform will give us an opportunity to scrutinize that proposed law and come up with suggestions to make that law a better law that will serve the interest of the people and also serve the interest of the media. I would like to thank you, Ndate Sithetho, and the MISA Lesotho Secretariat for organizing this dialogue. It's much needed, and it has come at the moment that everyone is looking at us as MISA Lesotho to see how we react or what we come with as alternatives or an alternative to what has been suggested by the government. And I think during these few hours that will be gathered here, will be able to do exactly that. And that if you allow me, with those words, I would like to say again that I welcome all the participants on behalf of MISA Lesotho National Governing Council, and wish you all fruitful discussions that will yield the fruits that we'll all be proud of. And I hope that we will achieve the objectives of this session. With those words, that I declare this meeting officially opened. Like I said when I started here, that we have our regional director with us here. He would also have a few words to say to us before we start with what we are planning to do for today.
Thank you, that is Mr. Kanano Boletse, the chairperson of MISA Lesotho. Thank you very much for those welcome remarks. Let me now invite the regional chairperson of MISA, that is Mr. Golden Monganids, if that is well spelled out, forgive me for that. Let me invite the regional chairperson. Are you around, Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Ndate Mzimkulu. As you have said, yeah, you tried to say it well. My name is Golden, the regional chairperson. I'm speaking from here in Zimbabwe. First of all, let me say that I will make very few remarks, like that Kananelo said I'm supposed to give a few words. Having said this, ladies and gentlemen, I first of all would like to congratulate MISA Lesotho, the director Ndate Leketo, and the chairperson and your team for organizing this very important event, especially at this moment when we are all seeing that we are moving very fast in the digital era, where there is a growing surveillance, especially on the citizens and journalists, not just in our countries, but across the whole continent and beyond. The advent of new communication technologies, ladies and gentlemen, has seen the growth in the use of internet and artificial intelligence in our daily communication and our struggles to access information. I cannot overstate what doors the internet has opened in terms of access to information and communication. And this virtual meeting or conference is a clear example of the boundless opportunities that are being offered by the internet. The latest fad now is ChatGPT, and I am sure you have all encountered it. So, ladies and gentlemen, having said this, you can see that technology offers so many opportunities, but unfortunately, it also opens the doors for surveillance. Surveillance poses a threat to privacy, whistleblowers, and ultimately good investigative journalism. At the heart of investigative journalism is the protection of whistleblowers. But in such privacy if such privacy is compromised, then journalists are unable to carry out their duties. If journalists are not free to carry out their duties and citizens are unable to express themselves freely for fear of surveillance, then unfortunately, democracy dies. Many countries, for example, Zimbabwe is one of the 3 Southern African countries that have been named as having clandestinely acquired surveillance equipment from an Israeli firm known as Circles. The other 2 are Zambia and Botswana, the other countries. And the previous Lesotho administration came up with a number of regulations that could further entrench surveillance. This raised of surveillance in Southern Africa. I am aware that governments will retort and say surveillance equipment is being acquired in an effort to enhance citizens' safety and security. We have no problem with the provision of safety and security, but what we call for is a human rights-based approach to the deployment of such technology, where governments are transparent about what information they collect and what they want to use it for. In all cases, there should be judicial oversight so that governments do not go beyond the bounds of the law. Citizens' rights to free expression, assembly, and privacy should be sacrosanct whenever surveillance technology is used. For this regard, my hope is that today's deliberations will come up with concrete resolutions and advocate steps on how we can hold our governments accountable in the use of surveillance technology. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this makes a few words that I've been asked to share with you this morning. I wish you all fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maunganitz, for those remarks. I think some kind of miscommunication. We had hoped that as the regional chairperson would also add value by declaring these opened, but the chairperson, national chairperson, had done so. No problem. Let's proceed with our program. At this juncture, I would love to invite a message of support from the director of Internews Southern Africa, that's Miss Rosemary Viljoen. Mr. Mashazi, are you able to play the video on your site? Mr. Ngaba? Hello? Mr. Ngaba, are you able to play the video on the site? Let me see if I can decide. This is a pre-recorded message. I think technological challenges at play. Let me see.
In person, as the team is in Botswana.
Can we hear?
Congratulations to MISA Lesotho for putting today's webinar together. I wish that you have robust and engaging discussions on this really important topic. We're sad that we couldn't be there to participate with you today in person, as the team is in Botswana undertaking training and capacitation for journalists and civil society on cybersecurity and digital surveillance. We would like to congratulate and acknowledge the work being done by MISA Lesotho in support and to promote media freedoms and freedom of expression in Lesotho, this against the backdrop of increased cybersecurity laws and digital surveillance, not just in Lesotho, but across the region. As part of the training and capacitation undertaken by Internews, MISA Lesotho has taken up the mantle to develop a journalism support framework, which will be a mechanism that will support and capacitate journalists in their time of need for a raft of tools and toolkits that we hope will be coming online in the next month or so. We would further like to acknowledge the capacitation and bridge role that MISA Lesotho has played in bringing together civil society and media.
Can we hear the speaker? Participants, can we hear the speaker?
From my side, I can hear the speaker.
Yes, I can also hear. Yes.
Even from Lusaka, we can hear the speaker.
There are people who have sent messages to say they can't hear the speaker. Let me just try and find out if I can increase the volume and maybe just start the message. Sorry for that.
Congratulations to MISA Lesotho for putting today's webinar together. I wish that you have robust and engaging discussions on this really important topic. We're sad that we couldn't be there to participate with you today in person, as the team is in Botswana undertaking training and capacitation for journalists and civil society on cybersecurity and digital surveillance. We would like to congratulate and acknowledge the work being done by MISA Lesotho in support and to promote media freedoms and freedom of expression in Lesotho, this against the backdrop of increased cybersecurity laws and digital surveillance, not just in Lesotho, but across the region. As part of the training and capacitation undertaken by Internews, MISA Lesotho has taken up the mantle to develop a journalism support framework, which will be a mechanism that will support and capacitate journalists in their time of need for a raft of tools and toolkits that we hope will be coming online in the next month or so. We would further like to acknowledge the capacitation and bridge role that MISA Lesotho has played in bringing together civil society and media. Congratulations to MISA Lesotho. Congratulations to MISA Lesotho.
Okay. I think there's a problem with the video. However, I think in the message just come across. Sorry for that. It was the recorded message, but I think we got a glimpse of what Ms. Viljoen was saying. Ms. Viljoen, like I indicated, is the director for Internews Southern Africa. Let's proceed with the rest of the program. We are now going to venture into presentations. Let me just go through the topics that are put forth for this conference and trends across the Southern African region. We are also going to venture into sharing of experiences by Zambia, Zimbabwe, and of course, we had loved to get an experience from Namibia or sharing of experiences from Namibia. The two countries I've mentioned, Zambia is still in the process of developing or promulgating their cybersecurity and computer crimes legislation. Zimbabwe has already done so, and we are going to have experiences from those two countries. We are also going to, after a break, we'll look at the critical analysis of the Computer Crimes and Cybersecurity Bill 2023 of Lesotho. That will be presented by the Southern Africa Litigation Center. we will delve now on the civil society's concerns about the effects and impact of the mooted computer crimes and cybersecurity laws, particularly the one for Lesotho, looking closely at how it affects investigative journalism and diminishes civic spaces online. We'll close the session for today by having a presentation on the resources, tools, and frameworks that are available for journalists as they navigate ways by which they can protect themselves against state-sponsored surveillance. And that will be presented by Mr. Tawanda Mugari. Sorry for that. Let me now start with the first presentation from Mr. Richard. Sorry. That is Mr. Frederico Links. That is state surveillance practices and trends across the Southern African region. Mr. Links, are you available?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Siteto.
The floor is yours.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah,
let me just, I had hoped I would have your brief bio so that we can know, the participants can have a glimpse of who we are talking about. Maybe you'll just briefly explain who you are and what we do so that we understand your areas of special. The floor is yours.
Yeah, yes. So my name is Frederico Links. I'm a researcher and journalist from Namibia. I've also been sort of active in internet governance, for about a decade now. And my specific focuses, both as a project coordinator and a journalist and a researcher over most of the last decade, have been, how state surveillance and cybersecurity related law, policy, and regulation are impacting digital rights, but not just digital rights, of course, but also, how these sorts of practices impact people offline. So I've coordinated a number of projects within this space, and I'm part of 2 projects at the moment that look at the issues around state surveillance and its impact on human rights. One is a 8-country research project across the Southern African region, and the other is sort of a project that through which I get to publish articles around state surveillance practices and looking at state surveillance. So I've written quite a bit about this over the last, the last 4 or 5 years, yeah. So this is sort of just a brief background. So yeah, I've been asked to speak to the issues of state surveillance practices and activities at sort of a regional context, and I mean, as was already pointed out by the previous speakers, we are at a point where what is coming through the pipeline across the region in terms of law, policy, and regulation at country levels is highly concerning. And I mean, the fact that we are here and that the program seeks to look at the law proposal on the table in Lesotho, which is a highly problematic draft, sort of exemplifies the situation we find ourselves in across the region. I was speaking in an event yesterday on sort of the same topic, same presentation, almost same presentation, to the participants in a Botswana workshop, a 3-day workshop, which is the one where Rosemary Fillion is at. And I was speaking at that workshop yesterday as well, in terms of, sort of this issue and the impacts on human rights. So I mean, this is a regional concern that we have to look at, and that as both the media and civil society, we have to confront and confront robustly. If we're going to, salvage, sort of open and transparent media landscapes and civil society landscapes, we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to be very robust about confronting what is coming down the pipeline in terms of cybercrime and surveillance-related law, policy, and regulatory crafting. So yeah, so let me get into, because the time is short. So I mean, I just want to start off by stating that, I mean, this is not just a concern for us here in the region. These issues are issues that are global, and we've now had a number of statements at UN General Assembly level and resolutions that have expressed concern and that have articulated sort of guidance for states on this, and as well as at the UN Human Rights Council and Committee. So I mean, just in 2019, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights to Freedom of Peaceful Assembly and Association, Clement Vuul, in an address to a report to the UN Human Rights Council, stated that a surge in legislation and policies aimed at combating cybercrime has also opened the door to punishing and surveilling activists and protesters in many countries around the world. So that really underscores the issue, sort of the point that this isn't just something that is concerned to us. And then in December 2019, the UN General Assembly issued a resolution 74/146, implementing the Declaration on the right to and responsibility of individuals, groups, and organs of society to promote and protect universally recognized human rights and fundamental freedoms through providing a safe and enabling environment for human rights defenders, ensuring their protection. Now, that specific declaration, also the resolution, also dealt with digital rights related issues, and the UN General Assembly resolution expressed grave concern that national security, counter-terrorism, and cybercrime legislation and other measures, such as laws regulating civil society organizations, are in some instances misused to target human rights defenders who have hindered their work and endangered their safety in a manner contrary to international law. So that was just sort of the latest resolution around this. So there were some earlier in 2016, and even back in 2013-14, that's raised similar sentiments, similar concerns. And then last year, in 2021, 125 global civil society organizations, also sent a letter to the United Nations Ad Hoc Committee on Cybercrime, in which these organizations stated in 2019 and once again this year, that's now in 2021, the UN General Assembly expressed grave concerns that cybercrime legislation is being misused to target human rights defenders and hinder their work and endanger their safety in a manner contrary to international law. This follows years of reporting from non-governmental organizations on the human rights abuses stemming from overbroad cybercrime laws. Now, it's important to note that when we're confronting the tendencies to that we're seeing in terms of law and regulation crafting, that we raise these sorts of sentiments, these concerns that have been articulated at these high levels, to say, look, to our governments, to the various office bearers and office holders that are, sort of in charge of these legal drafting processes, that look, here are high-level statements at international level, at UN General Assembly level, resolutions that our countries have, were party to and have been party to, and these statements have to be taken into consideration when we're coming up with laws and policies and regulations that become sort of human rights threatening. So I just want to emphasize that what we're confronting here, what you're talking about here, is firstly, what are the substantive threats coming through in terms of your cybercrime law at the moment, and the attending regulations, and the enforcement mechanisms, and then also, what are the specific communications or digital surveillance aspects that affect, because we're talking about this in a journalistic setting, these communication or digital surveillance mechanisms that are built into these cybercrime law, regulation, and enforcement mechanisms that speak to undermining media freedom, that speak to undermining the freedom of expression in your context. And I mean, because we are in a situation where in platforms like these, we have to learn from each other, because how you confront this will help me also to confront what is coming down the pipeline in Namibia, where we've had an indication that probably by in September we'll have a substantive draft cybercrime law, a draft bill that would be ready for submission to Parliament. I don't foresee that being the case. I sort of privately, it has been indicated that probably will not happen. But in case that happens, that we have sort of a body of support through resources that emerge from across the region, and now there is, I mean, sort of a body of evidence that speaks to the concerns across the regions at national levels. So I think just to jump straight into sort of the broad concerns that emerge from what we see in terms of the trends in surveillance and in digital surveillance, and what governments in the region are doing, and sort of the issues that emerge from not just cybercrime lawmaking, but also the enhancing of already existing surveillance-related law and regulatory frameworks in place. So, I mean, first of all, there's always this issue of a lack of proportionality, where anything is justified under the mantle of national security, for instance. So you have, even if you look at these surveillance mechanisms or provisions in these laws, they are not proportionate to sort of the crimes that they seek to be applied to. So what you have sort of generally is this trend to mass surveillance, where mandatory SIM card registration, data retention, or these mass surveillance mechanisms are then become or what being pushed through this national security narrative as necessary and proportionate to what is required. But these measures aren't necessary. Even there's no limiting this to sort of serious crime, but any sort of crime, or what can be ascribed to be a crime under this national security mantle, can these overbearing surveillance communications capabilities and mechanisms can be applied to anything that is sort of labeled a crime under this national security mantle. So there's a lack of proportionality and a lack of the definition, defining it as necessary in all contexts. So we find that to be an issue. The other issue, am I still audible, by the way? Everybody can hear me.
Yes, very much. Very audible. I'm not sure, just worried about the time. I'm not sure if we could just hasten your presentation.
All right. Okay, I'll do that. So there's also generally, if we look at these laws and surveillance mechanisms, there's a lack of oversight, and not just a lack of oversight. In a lot of instances, there's sort of a suggestion of an oversight mechanism, but it's usually very weak where it exists, or it's just totally lacking. There's no way where somebody who suspects abuse can really turn for redress when it comes to holding state security entities and law enforcement accountable for their use of surveillance mechanisms. There's also not user notification, whether post, whether it's within a given time frame after the surveillance has occurred, or in other contexts. So, I mean, this is something that has become sort of accepted within surveillance frameworks, and yet that is lacking for us. And of course, then there's the need for stronger protection of communications data. We all have concerns around, for instance, mandatory SIM card registration, and how secure those data sets are, those databases are, and who has access to them, and under what circumstances, given everything that we know about what is happening. And it's our concerns are valid in terms of what's happening in terms of data protection. So you have, for instance, across the continent, that 60% of countries have data protection laws, but in most of those countries, those laws aren't actually implemented, or they are just partially implemented. So once again, there's this aspect of necessary protections and strong protections being not in place, while all of these sort of intrusive and potentially privacy and rights violating legislative frameworks are being crafted and implemented. At the same time, these protections and safeguards are not in place. So, I mean, that's sort of I just wanted to highlight some of these issues. And then, of course, there are sort of other broad flaws that I would call familiar flaws that emerge out of sort of the cybercrime related law and cybersecurity related law and policy and regulations that are coming down the pipeline across our various countries. And of course, first of all, these laws have not been subjected to a democratic, inclusive processes and consultations, which is a problem, because we know that in a lot of instances in our countries, the expertise to be able to advise on what might work and what will probably be problematic, that sort of expertise does not reside in government departments or in law enforcement agencies, or even in state security agencies. So what you have coming out of these undemocratic, not inclusive processes are really bad law and policy making examples of bad law and policy making and regulatory crafting. Another aspect that always emerges, that seems to emerge generally, is the issue of weak and problematic definitions, or the absence of key definitions. And then, of course, there's the issues around the under-provisioning or weak provisioning around unauthorized access, secret warrants, and warrantless search and seizure measures in these laws. There's also generally a lack of transparency around the activities of relevant law enforcement and security officials and entities. There's, as I already indicated, there's a lack of adequate judicial or parliamentary oversight over law enforcement and security entities. And that's just a general issue if you look across our region. Of course, then I've also already addressed the issue of a lack of privacy and data protections. And then there's the issue of excessive and unaccountable discretionary executive power vested in say a minister or an official within the police or security cluster, or and even within telecommunications companies. Some of our laws vest a lot of discretionary power around accessing user data, for instance, at a rather junior level official within a telecommunications or internet service provider, and this is problematic. So these are some of the issues that I thought would be, and that I hope will emerge as well when you discuss the issues around the draft that is has been flagged as problematic in your context in Lesotho. And I hope some of these issues are really what you will sort of coalesce around and as a way forward. I think what we can do as media and civil society is to counter the narratives, and there's a lot out there in terms of reports and research that assist in countering the state-driven narratives around national security, for instance, and to push back against these narratives. Because I mean, we have context in our region where you can just by looking at the text see that this is not about national security. This is about regime security. This is about the maintenance of power by a specific political party or movement, or person even. So we have to push back against this national security, because national security would speak to human security, and not just state security, not just regime security. It would speak to human security as well. So we have to, there's enough evidence, there's enough out there now, to resources out there now for us to use to assist us in pushing back against this national security narrative, which has become a problematic narrative across the region. And then, of course, we have to find effective ways of confronting state surveillance abuse and overreach, and just bad attempts and proposals at internet regulation and control. And we have to keep in mind, when you look at some of these texts, this is about control, controlling what is being said, controlling what is being published, and this is when you look at some of the texts emerging across our region, the legal drafts and so on, these are the things that we have to confront and find effective ways of doing that, and that speak to our specific context. And I hope in this workshop today that you will sort of articulate some of those effective ways, or come up with effective ways to do that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to leave it there. I hope this assists in sort of deepening the discussion that will be had for the rest of the morning and into the afternoon. And it's been a pleasure. and I wish you all the best. Unfortunately, I have a string of other appointments that I have to attend to, so I won't be able to sit through the whole program, and I have to, unfortunately, to sign off after my intervention here. But thank you very much, and thanks for listening.
That is Frederico. Thanks very much for your insightful, indeed informative, as well as educative presentation. I think we have delved deeper into very critical issues around the cybersecurity, the computer crimes legislation, looking at issues of lack of proportionality in as far as the national security is concerned, a greater focus, a high premium placed by governments on regime security vis-a-vis national human security, so to speak. I think they have really given us a great deal of information, issues of lack of judicial oversight, the excessive powers vested on ministers and other agencies of state. Thanks very much for that, and wish you good luck and also have a nice day as you proceed with other errands. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
That is
it's been a pleasure.
Links from the Institute of Public Policy Research in Namibia, and he was addressing the issue of state surveillance practice and trends across the Southern African region. Let me now move to the next item. We are going to get experiences shared by our colleagues in the region. Let me start with Mr. Richard Mulonga from Zambia. He's going to share the Zambian experience in as far as the process of promulgating the computer crimes and cybersecurity legislation is concerned, and also share the experience in as far as how these impinge or infringe on fundamental human rights, issues of state surveillance, and also access to information. Mr. Mulonga, the floor is yours. Thank you. Mr. Mulonga.
Thank you very much, comrades. And I'd like to also extend greetings to all the comrades in arms across the region.